Hi, my name is Wayne Weirs, and I wrote the book Fading Toward Enlightenment. See if I can get that right so the light doesn't shine it too bad. Anyway, that's me. I'm doing a series of videos. This is my first one, so forgive me. The reason I'm doing them is because I want to put a real face on an author or on an advanced spiritual seeker. So many authors and stuff do big lectures and things, and they seem so impersonal. They're standing up there and they're lecturing. I guess in a way you could say this is sort of a lecture, but like I said, I'm trying to put a real face on who I am, complete with dirty dishes in the sink and kind of ugly blue and green walls. The reason I'm doing it that way, the reason I wrote the book, as a matter of fact, a big reason, was because when I was going through the spiritual, when I was starting out on the path, and if you've read the book, you understand, kind of what I went through. I went through this process of disenchantment with the world. But when I was going through that, I had a very hard time finding a real world example of a person like me, disenchanted with the world, confused, who was going through what I was going through. I couldn't find anything like that. I mean, I could find people who claimed to be enlightened, and I could find a whole host of people, psychiatrists and stuff, who would tell you, who had written all these books, who were telling you, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to stop thinking this, et cetera, which none of it seemed to be helping it. None of it seemed to be addressing what a spiritual seeker goes through when they really have no support system. So that's a big reason why I want to do these videos, is I want to show that I know what you're going through. I've been there, and though I maybe have written a book and I take a lot of pictures and stuff, I still live very humbly, and I'm a very real person in the sense of a spiritual seeker. There are books out there, fictional accounts, which is pretty much all I had to go by, and I really didn't put much faith into those because I was kind of a rational type of person. The Alchemist, Siddhartha, the Peaceful Warrior, all these are fictional accounts. Peaceful Warrior claims to be true, Celestine Prophecy claims to be true, but I couldn't believe them. That was my only guidance. So Fading Toward Enlightenment is a real world example of what I went through, but what almost all spiritual seekers go through. That's really the kind of feedback I get is people feel like they are finally understood, and these videos are to help complement that, to make me real. The book is all about kind of my quest, but it's really about your quest too. It's to make the whole experience very real and very tangible. Now, what Fading Toward Enlightenment is about, ultimately, it's about finding inner peace. You see, one of the biggest problems with the spiritual seeker is that we tend to, and I went through this, for the longest time I went through this, is I had this ideal of what enlightenment was about. And then when I would see people like Eckhart Tolle or read about Ramana Maharshi, I had this like, oh, that's enlightenment. That's what I got to get to. Even though, ironically, I couldn't figure out how someone who's like that can possibly survive. Because they don't seem to have any yang energy. I want to get something done type of energy. But that's a whole nother story. We'll get into that later. What the book, though, is about is finding inner peace and finding comfort with not being enlightened. You're no longer normal because you're a spiritual seeker. You've seen things that have changed your outlook on life, but you have not gotten to the enlightened stage either. And I call this the liquid level. You're not as solid as most people are. You see almost the divine in everything. You see beauty in almost everything. You stop being addicted to the constant, I gotta have this, I gotta have that, I gotta have the best wife, I gotta have the best house, I gotta have the nice car, the job, the security, the power. your ego is loosening, and you're starting to see meaning behind things. That's what a spiritual seeker is about. You've gone from this solid state to this dynamic level, and it's dynamic because you're not enlightened. You're still kind of programmed to the solid state, so you constantly flow back and forth between these two. Sometimes you get caught up in the world and you tighten up, and other times as you practice meditation and whatnot, you loosen up. What fading toward enlightenment is about is becoming comfortable with that dynamic state. Usually, when we're first starting out, we kind of feel the solid state, the egotistical state is bad, and the enlightened state is good. Fading toward enlightenment is coming to acknowledge that you're not enlightened and finding comfort with that constantly shifting awareness. Sometimes you're tight, sometimes you're loose, sometimes you're almost not there. Other times it's like your thoughts are so overwhelming that you can't get out of them. That's part of the nature. You don't have to cling to this ethereal nature, and you don't have to worry if you're too solid. It's saying, okay, that's the way I am. That is really what my conclusions were in the book, is that when I finally found comfort, when I finally found inner peace, it was through acknowledging that I'm not normal, but I'm not enlightened either. And it's okay. It's okay to live that way. And that's what all the photos are about. I mean, this is, as a matter of fact, here's one I opened up just purely at random. I'll try to line it up here. I'm not very good at this yet. This is when I was going through some of the difficult times here. You can see it's a picture of a sign that's been knocked down in Coral Gables, Florida. Some of the trauma we go through. We hate ourselves. We beat ourselves up and things. Here's another example, again, completely at random, of a picture of two buildings. One, it's got the windows open here, expressing what I was hoping to express was the enlightened aspect. I'm open and stuff. And this one has the windows closed, and they're facing each other. And this is really what the enlightened, or the liquid level, is about: is finding comfort with these two states. They're very similar. We're all made of the same stuff. An enlightened person's made up of skin and flesh and bone, just like you are, as a solid is. But it's just that they're less here. An enlightened person is, and of course, the book is about finding comfort with that. Probably what gets you started on the spiritual quest is the questioning of assumptions. There's a big difference between questioning authority, which is what teenagers do, and questioning assumptions. I went through this during the military. Is when I realized I was being brainwashed. Most teenagers, and I was the same thing as teenagers, you're trying to define yourself, so you reject authority, you reject your parents, you reject your teachers, you reject laws and stuff, and so you kind of do this. But there's a lot of anger to that. What happens when you start to question assumptions, you're actually questioning your own thoughts, your own belief systems. Once that starts to happen, you become a spiritual seeker. You start to try to find meaning in life. You start to try to find something solid to stand on, a ground, because everything's a little misty. Everything seems so confusing. It's rather frightening, as a matter of fact. So you find books and stuff. You find teachers, but if you're wise enough, you'll start to live true. You'll start to listen to your inner nature, and that, even though it may look like you're rejecting authority, and you are in a way, you're not acting in accordance with authority. It's totally different from a teenager rejecting authority. A teenager does it out of rebellion, out of anger. You're doing it out of living true to your nature. Huge difference. But that's the first step of the spiritual seeker. And if you aren't quite comfortable with that yet, that is exactly what I would focus on to get you going on that. Start listening to your true nature, and that will take you down the path. It's not an easy path by any means, But listening to your heart, listening to your true nature, and taking a good, honest look at yourself, that's what gets you started on the path. And forget about enlightenment. Just forget about that right now. Just start trying to find comfort with this liquid level, this shifting level. I think that's about it. I think that's enough for today. I'm doing, like I said, this is my first video. I apologize if it's a little off and cocky and weird. But what can I say? Here it is. Thank you.